Used to a simple life, she never imagined getting close to someone seen as a beggar. Moved only by empathy, she begins to share small moments with that unknown man. Between conversations and silences, a connection arises that challenges everything the people around judge, until an unexpected revelation puts everything she believed to be real in doubt. If you like stories of love and romance, watch until the end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comment saying where you are listening to this beautiful story from. Let's continue. The cold dawn air cut through the deserted streets of Brass like a sharp blade. Louisa adjusted the shawl over her shoulders while walking hurriedly along the uneven sidewalk, balancing in her right hand a bag of day-old bread she had bought at a discount at the corner bakery. It was almost 6 in the morning, and she needed to arrive soon at Donna Cecilia's house, where she had worked for 4 years as a cleaning lady. The routine was always the same. Wake up before the sun rose, take 2 buses across the entire city, clean a huge house in Higienopolis, and return to her rented room on the outskirts with an aching body and swollen feet. But Louisa never complained. At 28, she had learned that life didn't ask if you were ready for the challenges it placed in your path. It simply delivered them and expected you to keep moving forward. That morning, however, something different caught her attention. At the corner of Rua Oriente and Avenida Rangel Pestana, under the faded marquee of an abandoned commercial building, there was a man sitting on the ground. It wasn't unusual to see homeless people there. The region was full of them. But there was something in that man's posture that made Louisa slow her pace. He was leaning against the wall, his head down, his disheveled hair covering part of his face, wearing worn-out clothes that had once been good, but now hung from his thin body like forgotten rags. His hands, dirty with soil and stained, rested on his bent knees. He didn't beg for alms, didn't stretch out his hand, didn't look at anyone. He just existed there, as if the world had forgotten him, and he had accepted that forgetfulness with silent resignation. Louisa stopped. She looked at the bag of bread she was carrying and felt a tightening in her chest. She herself had so little, living by counting pennies at the end of the month, sometimes going without lunch to pay the overdue rent. But there was something in her that could never ignore the suffering of others. Her mother, who had died when she was 15, always said that a person's greatest wealth was not in their pocket, but in their ability to share the little they had. Louisa took a deep breath, crossed the street and approached the man. He didn't lift his head when he noticed her shadow approaching. He was used to it. People passed by, looked. Some threw coins from a distance so they wouldn't have to get close. Others simply quickened their pace as if misery were contagious. But then he heard a soft, feminine voice that carried neither exaggerated pity nor disguised contempt. A voice that sounded genuinely human. "Good morning," Louisa said, crouching beside him carefully so as not to startle him. "I brought some bread. It's still warm. Would you like some?" He raised his face slowly, and when his eyes met hers, Louisa felt something strange cross her chest. They were tired eyes, yes, marked by a deep sadness that seemed to have ancient roots, but they were also eyes of a surprising light grey, intense, the kind you wouldn't expect to find in someone left to abandonment. For a brief moment, she had the feeling that this man didn't belong in that place, in that situation, but the impression passed as quickly as it came. "Thank you," he replied, his voice hoarse and low, as if he weren't used to using it. He accepted the bread she held out to him and held it with both hands, as if it were something precious. "Have you been here long?" Louisa asked, sitting on the edge of the sidewalk beside him, not caring about the dirt on the ground. He hesitated before answering. "Some time." "Do you have somewhere to sleep? Any family?" "No." Louisa nodded, asking no more questions. She didn't want to invade his privacy. She didn't want him to feel interrogated or judged. They sat there for a few minutes in silence while he ate slowly, chewing each piece as if he were savoring not just the food, but also the unexpected company. When he finished, he wiped his hands on his pants and looked at her again. "Why did you do this?" he asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice. Louisa smiled, a small but true smile. "Why wouldn't I?" He didn't answer. He just watched her with those grey eyes that seemed to see much more than she imagined. Louisa stood up, shook out the skirt of her simple dress, and adjusted the bag on her shoulder. "I work around here," she said. "I pass by every day early in the morning. If you need anything, I'll be nearby." Before he could respond, she was already crossing the street again, walking fast toward the bus stop. He followed her with his gaze until she disappeared around the corner, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something different stir inside his chest. It wasn't simple gratitude for the food. It was something more complex, deeper, which he couldn't name. Rafael de Albuquerque Sampaio Neto was 34 years old and had a fortune that most people couldn't spend in 10 lifetimes. Heir to one of the most traditional families in São Paulo, owner of companies, farms, real estate scattered across the entire country, and a title of nobility that had come from Portugal since the 19th century, he should have been anywhere in the world except sitting in the dirt of a sidewalk in the old city center. But that was exactly what he chose to do 6 months ago, when he decided he could no longer stand living surrounded by falsehood. He had grown up in a world where all relationships were mediated by interest. Friends who only appeared when they needed favors, women who faked love but only wanted the last name and the bank account, relatives who smiled to his face and plotted behind his back to get the inheritance. After 2 broken engagements, both with women who revealed themselves to be gold diggers and manipulators, Rafael had reached a bitter conclusion. Nobody loved him for real. They loved what he represented, what he could offer, the luxury life that came with him. But the man behind it all? That one was invisible. It was then that he had an extreme idea. He wanted to know if there was still anyone in the world capable of seeing value in a human being stripped of any wealth, title, or power, someone who could care about him just for who he was, not for what he possessed. So he made up a story for his family, saying he was going to travel abroad for an indefinite period, left his business in the hands of his trusted lawyer, put away all his credit cards, all his jewelry, exchanged his designer clothes for rags bought at thrift stores, and went to the street to live like a beggar. In the beginning, it was brutal. The hunger, the cold, the loneliness, the contempt in the expressions of people who passed him as if he were trash. Rafael, who always had everything, discovered what it was like to have nothing. He discovered what it was like to be ignored, to be treated as if he weren't a person, to be shooed away from places as if his mere presence contaminated the air. And he also discovered that his theory was right. Nobody cared. Weeks turned into months, and no one stopped to ask his name, to offer genuine help, to look into his eyes and see a human being there. Until that morning. Until Louisa. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know where he had come from. She didn't know that beneath that appearance of misery existed a man who could buy the entire block if he wanted to. And yet, she stopped. She offered food. She sat beside him on the dirty ground. She smiled. She treated him with a dignity he didn't find even among the wealthiest and most educated people he knew. Rafael was disturbed for the rest of the day. He couldn't get the image of that woman with the simple smile and kind eyes out of his head. She wasn't beautiful in the conventional sense of the word. She didn't have the artificial and rehearsed beauty of the socialites who attended the same events he used to frequent. But there was something about her that touched him in a way he didn't expect. A genuine beauty that came from within, that shone through in her delicate gestures and soft voice. The next morning he was in the same place, waiting. He didn't know if she would return, but something inside him wanted her to, and when he saw her silhouette appearing around the corner, with the same bag in her hand and the same shawl on her shoulders, he felt a strange relief invade his chest. Louisa smiled upon seeing him and crossed the street again. This time she brought not just bread but also a thermos with hot coffee. "Good morning," she said, sitting beside him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I thought you might like some coffee too. It's so cold." He accepted the thermos with trembling hands, not from the cold but from emotion. "You didn't have to," he murmured. "I know, but I wanted to." They sat there talking for almost half an hour. Louisa told him about her work, about her demanding but fair boss, about her dream of one day saving enough money to take a technical nursing course. She spoke with a disarming simplicity, without victimizing herself, without complaining about the hard life she led, just sharing pieces of her routine as if she were talking to an old friend. Rafael, for his part, listened in silence, asking short questions, taking care not to reveal too much about himself, but increasingly fascinated by that woman who seemed to carry her own light amidst the darkness of the big city. When she stood up to leave, already late for work, he felt a pang of something he hadn't felt in years, a desire for her to stay, a desire for that moment to extend, a desire to know more, to understand what made her so different from all the other people he had encountered in his life. "See you tomorrow," Louisa said, waving before departing. And it was the first time in all those months on the streets that Raphael felt certain that tomorrow was worth waiting for. The days turned into weeks, and those morning encounters became a routine. Louisa always brought something, always sat beside him, always talked as if there were no difference between the two of them, and perhaps deep down there wasn't. Because despite all the money Raphael possessed, despite all the titles and properties, there on that dirty sidewalk in Brass, he was just a lonely man who had finally found someone who truly saw him. And Louisa, despite all the simplicity of her life, was the owner of something no fortune could buy, a genuinely good heart. Raphael began to wait for those moments with an anxiety he couldn't control. He started observing Louisa from afar when she didn't know she was being watched. He saw how she helped an elderly lady cross the street, how she shared her snack with a cardboard collector, how she talked to everyone with the same respect, from the cleaning lady to the bakery owner. It wasn't a selective kindness, calculated to impress. It was who she was, in essence, and that was exactly why he began to fall in love with her, without meaning to, without planning, without being able to avoid it. The social experiment he had created to test humanity was turning against himself, because now he had a much larger problem on his hands. He was falling in love with a woman who believed he was a beggar without a name, without a past, and without a future. And as the days went by, it became harder to maintain the lie he had built. 3 months had passed since the first meeting, and the relationship between Louisa and Raphael had evolved into something neither could clearly define. They weren't exactly friends, because there was an intimacy there that surpassed simple friendship. But they weren't anything officially either, because everything happened within those brief morning encounters, on that sidewalk that had transformed into their private universe. Raphael began to do small things for her without Louisa asking. When he discovered the strap of her bag was breaking, he fixed it with a piece of rope he found. When he saw she was carrying too much weight coming from the market, he offered to help, and walked beside her to the bus stop, carrying the groceries as if it were the most important task in the world. When he noticed she had a cold, he disappeared for a few hours and returned with an herbal tea that he said he had learned to make a long time ago. Louisa accepted everything with gratitude, but also with growing curiosity. There was something about that man that didn't fit the image of someone living on the streets. The way he spoke, despite the always discreet tone, revealed education. His hands, though dirty, had long and delicate fingers that didn't seem accustomed to manual labor. And his eyes, those grey eyes that sometimes observed her with a disturbing intensity, carried stories she knew would never be told. "You had a different life once, didn't you?" Louisa asked one Saturday morning, when she had more time because Donna Cecilia had traveled to the countryside to visit family. Raphael hesitated. He was sitting beside her on the bench of a nearby small square, sharing a meat pastry she had bought from a street vendor. The sun was high, and it was unusually warm for that month of May. "Why do you ask?" he replied, looking away. "Because sometimes you talk about things that, I don't know, that seem to come from a different place than here." Louisa bit her lip, hesitant. "You mentioned travels, books, classical music. It's not the kind of thing that a beggar would know," he finished with a bitter half-smile. "It's not that," Louisa said quickly, touching his arm lightly. "It's just that you seem to carry an entire world inside you, a world that was left behind." Raphael looked at her hand on his arm and felt his heart race. It was an innocent, unpretentious touch, but to him it meant more than any elaborate caress he had ever received in his life. It meant acceptance. It meant she wasn't disgusted by him, wasn't afraid, didn't see just a dirty body and torn clothes. She saw a human being. "Yes," he finally admitted, "I had another life, but I lost everything. And when you lose everything, you realize you never really had anything." It wasn't exactly a lie. Raphael had truly lost everything that mattered: trust in people, the hope of being genuinely loved, the faith that real kindness existed in the world. The rest, the money and the properties, were just things. empty things that didn't fill the hole inside him. Louisa squeezed his arm affectionately. I understand. I've also lost a lot. My mother, my house, my dreams of studying. But I learned that we rebuild. Slowly, with patience. But we rebuild. You are incredible, you know, Raphael said suddenly, turning to face her. The intensity in his gaze made Louisa blush. Me, I'm nothing special, I just do what I can. No, you are much more than you imagine. You have something most people have lost or never had, true humanity. You don't look at me and see a failure, you see a person. Louisa felt her heart beat faster. There was something in those words, in the way he said them, that affected her in a dangerous way. Dangerous because she knew she shouldn't be feeling what she was feeling. She shouldn't be thinking about him before sleeping. She shouldn't be anxiously waiting for the mornings just to see him. She shouldn't be creating impossible fantasies in her head. I have to go, she said suddenly, standing up too quickly. Donna Cecilia might call and I need to be home. Raphael understood that he had spoken too much, exposed too much. He nodded in silence and watched her leave in a hurry without looking back. And when she disappeared around the corner, he cursed quietly at himself. He was complicating everything. The plan was simple. Observe, understand human nature, prove his theory. But Louisa had transformed all of that into something completely different. She had transformed a cold experiment into real, deep and frightening feelings. Louisa, for her part, walked fast through the streets of Brass trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions taking over her. She was falling in love. She knew it, and it was complete madness. How could she fall in love with a man who had nothing, who lived on the streets, who would probably never be able to offer her a minimally stable life? But at the same time, how could she not fall in love with someone who looked at her that way, who listened to her with genuine attention, who made her feel important, seen, valued? When she arrived at the small room she rented in a boarding house in Muka, she threw herself onto the narrow bed and let the tears flow. Tears of confusion, of fear, of a silly hope that insisted on being born, even knowing it shouldn't. Her roommate, Jessica, a girl who worked at a beauty salon, looked at her worriedly. What is it, Lou? Did something happen? Louisa wiped her face with the back of her hand. I'm being an idiot, Jay, a big idiot. Tell me. And Louisa told her. She spoke about the morning meetings, the conversations, about how that man without a name and without an address had become the most important person in her days. Jessica listened to everything in silence, biting her lip, clearly concerned. Louisa, you know people are going to talk, right? If they find out you're, I don't know, getting involved with a homeless man. I'm not getting involved, we just talk. But you're feeling something for him. It's written all over your face. Louisa didn't answer because she knew it was true. She stayed looking at the peeling ceiling of the small room, listening to the noise of the cars outside and the shouts of the children playing in the boarding house hallway. Her life was already hard enough. Did she really need to complicate it even more by getting involved with someone who would only bring her problems? But when morning came the next day and she got ready for work, the first thing she thought about was him. And when she passed the corner where she usually met him and saw he wasn't there, she felt such a great disappointment that it almost hurt physically. She stood looking at the empty spot under the marquee, her heart tight, 1,000 bad thoughts passing through her head. Had he gone away? Had something happened? Would she never see him again? But in the afternoon, when she was returning from work, he was there, leaning against the wall in the same way as always, but with a different expression on his face. When he saw Louisa approaching, he stood up, and there was an urgency in his movements that she had never seen before. I thought you weren't going to show up anymore, she said, trying to hide the relief in her voice. I needed to resolve something, but I came back. Raphael took a step toward her, his hands nervous. Louisa, I need to tell you something. Her heart raced. What? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He was visibly fighting something internal, a silent battle she didn't understand. Finally, he shook his head, giving up. Forget it, it's nothing important. Are you sure? I am. But his look said otherwise. They stood there, facing each other, in the middle of the busy sidewalk with people passing hurriedly around them. No one paying attention to those two who seemed to exist in their own bubble, oblivious to the rest of the world. "I brought something for you," Raphael said suddenly, reaching into the pocket of his worn-out pants. He took out a small object wrapped in newspaper and held it out to her. Louisa took it carefully and unwrapped it. It was a paper flower, handmade, with delicate petals folded with almost artistic precision. Simple, but beautiful. "Did you make this?" she asked, moved. "I did. I learned when I was younger." Raphael looked away as if he had said too much. "I thought you might like it." "I love it." Louisa held the flower as carefully as if it were made of crystal. "Thank you, truly." And then she did something she hadn't planned, something that came from an impulse she couldn't control. She approached him and hugged him. It was a quick hug, almost shy, but enough to make Raphael freeze in place, completely overwhelmed by that demonstration of affection he wasn't prepared to receive. When Louisa pulled away, her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were bright. "I have to go, but thank you for everything." Raphael watched her leave with his heart beating out of rhythm, still feeling the warmth of that hug imprinted on his body. And at that moment, he knew he was completely lost. In love in a way he had never imagined possible. With a woman who didn't know who he was. With a woman who accepted him exactly as he presented himself, without demanding more, without expecting anything beyond company and sincere conversation. The problem was that the truth was becoming an unbearable weight. Every day he spent with her was another brick in the wall of lies he had built. And Raphael knew that sooner or later, that wall would collapse. The question was, when that happened, would there be any chance of Louisa forgiving him? Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Dr. Marcos Figueiredo, a successful dentist who owned 3 clinics in upscale neighborhoods of São Paulo, observed Louisa from afar as she entered the building where she worked. He had known her for a few months, ever since Donna Cecilia, who was his aunt, began talking about that cleaning lady who was so dedicated and good-hearted. Marcos was interested. Louisa wasn't like the frivolous and gold-digging women he usually met. She was simple, honest, hard-working, the kind of woman he could mold, educate, and transform into the perfect wife. There was only one problem. He had heard rumors that she was getting involved with a beggar downtown, and that was unacceptable. Marcos wasn't going to allow a woman with potential like Louisa to waste herself on some failure. He was going to have to intervene, and he was going to do it the way he always did things, with intelligence, patience, and efficiency. After all, he was not a man who accepted losing. The first time Marcos appeared at Donna Cecilia's house while Louisa was working was on a Tuesday afternoon. He arrived with a rehearsed smile, an impeccable suit, and a bouquet of expensive flowers that he handed to his aunt with a kiss on the cheek. Donna Cecilia, a lady in her 60s who still maintained the elegant posture of one born with a silver spoon, received her nephew with enthusiasm. "What a nice surprise, Marcos. You never come to visit me in the middle of the week." "I missed you, Aunt, and I brought those documents you asked for about the clinic." He held out a leather folder, but his eyes were already searching for something else in the house. "Are you alone?" "No, Louisa is here. She's cleaning the library." "Ah, yes, the famous Louisa." Marcos smiled. "You don't stop praising this girl. I'm curious to get to know her better." Donna Cecilia called Louisa, who appeared in the living room still wearing her work apron, her face slightly sweaty from the effort of organizing the heavy books on the high shelves. When she saw the elegant man beside Donna Cecilia, she immediately felt out of place, conscious of her own simple clothes and her hair tied up haphazardly in a ponytail. "Louisa, this is my nephew Marcos. Marcos, this is Louisa, whom I've told you so much about." Marcos extended his hand with a smile that showed teeth that were perfect and far too white. "A pleasure, Louisa. My aunt really didn't exaggerate. It's a pleasure to meet you." Louisa shook his hand quickly, not quite understanding the comment, and murmured a shy likewise before returning to the library. But throughout the afternoon, she felt Marcos's eyes on her. He had made up an excuse to stay, saying he needed to use his aunt's computer to resolve some matters. But Louisa noticed that he found reasons to move around the house, always passing near her, always striking up a conversation. "How long have you worked here?" he asked when he found her in the kitchen preparing afternoon coffee for Donna Cecilia. 4 years. "And do you like what you do?" "Yes, sir. Donna Cecilia is very good to me." "Marcos, you can call me Marcos." He leaned against the kitchen counter, studying her closely. Do you have family? Not anymore. My mother passed away when I was a teenager. I'm sorry, but the tone was more automatic than genuinely empathetic. And are you dating anyone? The question caught Louisa by surprise. She almost dropped the cup she was holding. No, I'm not dating. What a waste. Marcos smiled again, that studied smile that probably worked with most women. A beautiful and hard-working girl like you should have someone taking care of you. Louisa didn't know how to respond. She was thankful when Donna Cecilia called Marcos back to the living room, releasing her from that uncomfortable conversation. But in the following days, he began to appear more frequently, always with some excuse, bringing documents, picking up a book, having lunch with his aunt, and he always found a way to be near Louisa, to ask questions, to offer things. Let me give you a ride home, he offered one rainy afternoon. It makes no sense for you to get wet waiting for the bus. It's not necessary, Dr. Marcos. I'm used to it. But I insist, my car is right there, parked. Louisa hesitated, looking at the rain outside. It really was falling hard, and the idea of getting home dry was tempting. She ended up accepting. It was a mistake. Inside the imported car with air conditioning and leather seats, Marcos dropped information about himself, like someone planting seeds. He talked about the clinics he had, the famous patients he treated, the penthouse he was buying in MoMA, the plans to open more units. And then, with disturbing skill, he turned the subject. You deserve better than working as a cleaning lady your whole life, Louisa. There's nothing wrong with my work. I didn't say there was. I just said you deserve more. You deserve to study, to grow, to have opportunities. And how would I do that? I don't have money to study. There are ways. Marcos looked at her sideways. With the right people on your side, a lot is possible. Louisa pretended not to understand the insinuation and remained silent for the rest of the trip. When he stopped in front of the boarding house where she lived, he looked at the old and poorly maintained building with an expression she couldn't decipher. Pity? Disguised contempt? Determination? Thanks for the ride, Louisa said, opening the door quickly. Louisa, wait. Marcos held her arm lightly. I'd like to get to know you better. How about we have dinner one of these days? A nice place? Just the two of us? I don't think that's a good idea, Doctor. Why? Are you committed to someone? The image of Raphael appeared in Louisa's mind, sitting on that sidewalk, with the grey eyes that made her forget the world. But what commitment did she have with him? None official. Only confused feelings she didn't know how to name. It's not that, it's just, we are very different. You're a dentist, successful, you have money, I'm just a cleaning lady. Exactly for that reason. Marcos squeezed her arm more firmly. I could help you, get you out of this life, give you everything you deserve. You just need to give me a chance. Louisa pulled her arm away, bothered. I have to go, good night. She got out of the car and ran into the boarding house, her heart beating fast. Not from excitement, but from a discomfort she couldn't explain. Marcos was everything any woman in her position should want. Rich, established, offering security. But there was something about him that left her restless. Perhaps it was the way he spoke, as if she were a project to be developed, not a person to be known. Or perhaps it was simply the fact that he was not Raphael. Raphael. The nameless beggar who made her laugh with absurd stories, who listened to her venting with genuine attention, who looked at her as if she were the most important person in the world. How was it possible that he, with nothing, made her feel more valued than Marcos with everything? The next morning, Louisa woke up earlier than usual, anxious to meet Raphael. She needed to talk to him, she needed that sense of peace that only his company brought. But when she arrived at the usual corner, she found a scene that made her blood run cold. Raphael was there, but he wasn't alone. 3 men surrounded him, pushing, laughing. One of them kicked the can where Raphael kept the few coins he sometimes received. Another spat on the ground near him. The third held a piece of wood. You disgusting thing. Staying here, stinking up the street, scaring the business's customers, one of them said. Get out of here before we make you go by force, another threatened. Raphael was leaning against the wall, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender, trying to calm the situation without fighting back. But Louisa saw the flash of contained anger in his eyes, saw how his muscles grew tense, as if he were holding himself back with all his strength from exploding. Stop that! Louisa shouted, dropping her bag on the ground and running toward them. Leave him alone." The men turned surprised. One of them laughed. "Look at that, the beggar has a little girlfriend." "He's not doing anything wrong. Leave him alone or I'll call the police." "Oh yeah? And what is the police going to do? Arrest us for cleaning the street of this scum?" Raphael took a step forward, placing himself between Louisa and the men. "Don't talk to her like that," he said, his voice low but carrying an authority that made the aggressors hesitate. "She has nothing to do with this. You want to kick me out? Kick me out. But don't disrespect her." The man with the wood raised the improvised weapon, about to attack, but at that moment a policeman passing by the street noticed the commotion and approached. The three men retreated quickly, muttering curses, and ran away. Louisa ran to Raphael, her hands trembling. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine." But she saw his split lip, a small cut bleeding. "It was nothing." "Nothing? They could have killed you?" Tears began to flow down Louisa's face without her being able to control them. "Why are people like this? Why do they treat you this way?" Raphael wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand and looked at her with an expression that mixed gratitude and torment. Because that's how the world works. Those who have nothing are worth nothing to most. "You are worth something!" Louisa held his face with both hands, forcing him to look into her eyes. "You are worth a lot, and anyone who can't see that is blind." Time seemed to stop. Raphael looked at her with those grey eyes full of emotions Louisa couldn't completely decipher, but which made her heart beat so hard she was sure he could hear it. And then, without thinking, without calculating, moved only by the impulse of a feeling that no longer fit inside her, Louisa leaned in and kissed Raphael. It was a quick kiss, startled, almost innocent, but it was enough to turn their world upside down. When she pulled away, Louisa was red, shocked at her own boldness. Sorry, I shouldn't have." But Raphael didn't let her finish. He pulled her back, his arms wrapping around her with an urgency that didn't match the fragility he appeared to have. And he kissed her for real this time. A deep, desperate kiss, full of months of restraint, of denied feelings, of a passion that both tried to repress but which no longer obeyed logic or reason. When they finally separated, they were breathless, looking at each other as if they were seeing each other for the first time. "Louisa," Raphael whispered, his voice hoarse, "you don't know what you just did." "I know exactly what I did." She was trembling but determined, "and I don't regret it." But she should have. Because just a few meters away, hidden in the shadow of a store, Marcos watched everything with a cold smile on his lips. He had come after Louisa, wanting to surprise her on the way to work, and found exactly what he suspected. She was involved with that disgusting beggar. But not for long. Marcos already knew exactly what to do to separate the two and put Louisa in the place where she belonged, beside him, dependent on him, grateful to him. And he was going to start by doing what he did best, manipulating circumstances in his favor. He took his cell phone and called his aunt. "Donna Cecilia, I need to talk to you about Louisa. It's urgent, and you're not going to like what I have to tell you." The conversation between Marcos and Donna Cecilia happened that same afternoon in her office with the door closed. When Louisa arrived for work, she immediately noticed that something was wrong. Her boss, usually cordial and polite, barely looked at her. There was a tension in the air that Louisa couldn't understand. "Donna Cecilia, are you okay?" she asked, hesitant. The woman raised her eyes from the magazine she was pretending to read, and the look was cold. "Louisa, we need to talk." Louisa's heart plummeted. That tone never heralded anything good. "Did something happen?" "Sit down." Donna Cecilia pointed to the chair in front. Louisa obeyed, her hands sweaty. "My nephew told me something very worrying today. He said he saw you on the street, getting involved with a beggar." Louisa's blood froze. "I can explain." "There is nothing to explain, Louisa. Either it's true or it isn't." "It's true, but it's not the way you're thinking. He's a good, honest person. He's not like... He's a beggar." Donna Cecilia cut her off, her voice firm. "And you are in a relationship with him, kissing him on the street, according to my nephew. Is that it?" Louisa felt her cheeks burn. Anger and shame fought inside her. Yes. "Do you understand the gravity of this?" Donna Cecilia stood up, starting to walk back and forth. "I've trusted you in my house for 4 years. I trust you with my things, my privacy. And now I find out that you are involved with some hoodlum from the street." He's not a hoodlum. He never did anything wrong. Louisa, you are naive. This man is clearly taking advantage of you. He'll probably ask you for money, use you, involve you in wrong things, and I cannot allow an employee of mine to put herself in this situation." "Are you firing me?" Louisa's voice came out trembling. Donna Cecilia sighed, massaging her temples. "No, not yet, but I need you to promise me that you will end this ridiculous relationship, now." "I can't do that." "Can't or won't?" "Won't." Louisa stood up, her voice firmer now. "With all respect, Donna Cecilia, my personal life is none of your business. I do my job well. I've always been honest and dedicated. What I do outside here shouldn't matter." "It matters when it affects your reputation, and consequently it affects mine. What do you think people will say when they find out that the cleaning lady of the Albuquerque house is dating a beggar?" The name cut through the air like a whip. Albuquerque. Louisa blinked, confused. "Albuquerque? But isn't that the last name of—" "Of my nephew, yes, and mine too before I married. We are a traditional family, Louisa, respected, and we cannot afford to have inadequate associations." Louisa felt the anger boil. There it was, the naked truth. She was good enough to clean the house, to wash the clothes, to serve the coffee, but she wasn't good enough to have her own opinions, to make her own choices, to love whoever she wanted. "So that's it. Either I break up with him or you fire me." Donna Cecilia hesitated, her face divided between hardness and something that could be pity. "I'll give you a week to think. But Louisa, understand, you are throwing your life away because of a man who has nothing to offer you. Meanwhile, my nephew Marcos is genuinely interested in you. He could give you a dignified life, help you study, grow. Why do you insist on choosing the hard path? Because you don't choose who to love, Donna Cecilia. Love chooses you." And with that sentence, Louisa left the office before the tears started to fall. She spent the rest of the day working on autopilot, her mind far away. She needed to tell Raphael what was happening. She needed to warn him that things were getting complicated, that people were trying to separate them. But when she finished work and went to look for him at the usual place, he wasn't there. She waited an hour, 2 hours. She walked around the vicinity, asked other homeless people if they had seen him. Nothing. Raphael had vanished. Panic began to take hold of her. What if something had happened? What if those men from the morning had returned? What if he was injured somewhere, needing help? Louisa spent the entire night awake, her old cell phone in hand, wishing she had a number to call, an address to go to, any way to find him. Meanwhile, Raphael was in a luxurious suite at the Fasano Hotel, taking a hot shower for the first time in months, wearing clean and expensive clothes, looking at himself in the mirror, and not recognizing the man he saw reflected. He had left the streets temporarily because he needed to think. He needed to make a decision he had been postponing for too long. After the kiss with Louisa that morning, after seeing her cry for him, defend him, choose him despite everything, Raphael could no longer sustain the lie. He had to tell the truth. But how? How to explain that everything had been a sham from the beginning? How to make her understand that the feelings were real, even if the circumstances were manufactured? He picked up the phone and called his lawyer, Dr. Henrique, the only one who had known about the whole plan from the start. "Raphael, thank God, I thought something had happened. It's been 6 months since you disappeared. I know, Henrique, and I need your help. I need you to prepare some documents for me." "Documents? What kind?" "I want to transfer a property, and I want to do it as quickly as possible." On the other end of the line, the lawyer hesitated. "Raphael, are you sure? After all this time on the streets, are you thinking clearly?" "I'm thinking more clearly than ever." Raphael looked out the hotel window at the illuminated city below. "I found what I was looking for, Henrique. I found a real, true person who wants nothing from me but my company. And now I need to prove to her that this matters more than anything." "I understand, but Raphael, if she finds out who you are—" "She will find out because I'm going to tell her tomorrow." Raphael hung up the phone and sat on the edge of the king-size bed, his head in his hands. He was terrified. More terrified than he had ever been in the risky business deals he made, in the difficult decisions he took, in the moments when he risked fortunes, because this time he wasn't risking money. He was risking his heart. The next morning, Louisa ran to the usual corner even before the sun rose, and there he was, Raphael, but different. He was standing, not sitting. He had clean clothes, not rags. His hair was washed and combed, his face shaved. And when he looked at her, there was a determination in his grey eyes that she had never seen before. "Raphael, what? You look different." "Louisa." He walked toward her, his hands trembling slightly. "We need to talk. I need to tell you something. And you're going to hate me for it. But I can't hide it anymore." Her stomach churned. "Tell me what? You're scaring me." "Do you remember when you asked if I'd had another life?" He took a deep breath. "I still have that life. I never stopped having it. I just pretended I didn't." "What are you talking about?" Raphael took her hand, holding it firmly even when she tried to pull away. "My full name is Rafael de Albuquerque Sampaio Neto. I am a count by hereditary title, owner of a fortune of more than 500 million reais, and I was never really a beggar." The world seemed to stop spinning. Louisa looked at him, not understanding, her brain refusing to process the words she had just heard. "What?" "I faked it. 6 months ago I left my life of luxury and came to the streets because I wanted to know if there was still anyone in the world capable of loving me for what I am, not for what I have. And then I found you. And you changed everything." Louisa pulled her hand away forcefully, backing away as if he were poisonous. "You're lying. This is some kind of sick joke." "It's not a joke, it's the truth, and I have proof." Raphael took from his pocket a slim leather wallet, full of platinum credit cards, documents, a driver's license, with a photo of him well dressed. "Look, it's me, the real me." Louisa took the wallet with trembling hands, looked at the photo, at the name, at the bank cards that had limits with so many zeros she had never seen in her life. And then everything began to make sense in a horrible way. The way he spoke, the education, the knowledge about places and things a beggar should never know, everything was a lie. "You deceived me." Her voice came out like a broken whisper. "All this time you deceived me. No, the feelings were real. Everything I felt for you was real." "How can it be real if it was all based on a lie?" Louisa screamed, the tears finally falling. "You used me for your experiment? To prove some idiotic theory about humanity?" "In the beginning it was that, but later..." "Later what? Did you have fun watching the poor girl fall in love with the rich man pretending to be a beggar? Was it funny to you?" "No, it was never like that. I fell in love with you for real. That's why I'm telling you now." "You're telling me because you were found out, because someone recognized you, surely. It's not out of honesty, it's out of cowardice." Raphael shook his head, desperate. "No one recognized me. I'm telling you because I can't stand lying to you anymore, because I love you." Those words should have been sweet. They should have been everything she wanted to hear. But coming from his mouth now, they sounded like just another manipulation. "You don't know what love is," Louisa said, her voice cracking. "Love is truth, it's respect, and you gave me neither." "Louisa, please." "And you know what's worse? You know what's destroying me right now?" She wiped her tears angrily. "It's that I defended you. I lost my job because of you. People judged me, humiliated me, and I endured it all because I thought it was worth it, because I thought you were worth it, but you weren't real, none of it was real. I am real. The man you met, the man who listened to your stories, who fixed your bag, who made paper flowers for you, that man is real. The only difference is that I have money." "The difference is that you lied." Louisa took a step back when he tried to approach, "and I don't know if I can forgive that." "Let me show you." Raphael was begging now. "Let me take you to my house, show you who I really am. Let me prove that despite the error, the feelings are true. I don't want to see your house. I don't want to see your money. I want..." Her voice failed. "I wanted you to have been honest with me from the beginning. But if I had been honest, you would never have given me a chance. You would have seen me as a count, not as a man. And you think you had the right to take that choice away from me? To decide for me how I was going to react?" Louisa shook her head, exhausted. "You don't trust me, Raphael. You never did. And without trust, there is nothing." And with those words, she turned her back and began to walk. Raphael stood still, watching her walk away, each step she took like a blow to his chest. He wanted to run after her, wanted to force her to listen, but he knew he had lost that right the moment he chose the lie. So he did the only thing he could think of doing. He let her go. Louisa spent the next 3 days locked in her boarding house room, not eating properly, not sleeping, just crying and trying to process the size of the betrayal she had suffered. Jessica tried to console her, brought food, kept her company, but there were no words that could ease that pain. Because it wasn't just the pain of being deceived, it was the pain of having lost something she believed to be true. It was the pain of discovering that everything she had felt, all that deep connection she thought she had found, was built on a lie. Donna Cecilia called on the second day. Her voice was softer, almost maternal. "Louisa, my nephew told me what happened, about who that man really is. Are you okay?" "No, ma'am, I'm not. I understand, and I want you to know that your job is still here. When you are ready to return, I'll be waiting." It was a relief to know she wasn't unemployed, but Louisa could barely care about that at the moment. She hung up the phone and curled back into the thin blankets, trying to disappear into the void she felt in her chest. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Raphael was sitting in the library of his mansion in Perdices, surrounded by luxury and privilege that suddenly seemed completely meaningless. He had everything, absolutely everything, except the only thing that really mattered: Louisa. Dr. Henrique, his lawyer, was sitting in front of him, worried. "Raphael, you need to eat something. It's been 2 days." "I'm not hungry. This isn't healthy. You spent months on the streets and now you're killing yourself again, just in a different way." Raphael raised his eyes and the lawyer was startled by what he saw there. Pain. Genuine, deep pain, the kind that couldn't be cured with money or power. "I lost her, Henrique. I lost the only person who ever loved me for real. You don't know that. Maybe with time—" "Time?" Raphael laughed, a bitter sound. "Time won't change the fact that I lied to her, that I deceived her, that I used her for a selfish experiment of mine." "You didn't use her, you fell in love. But she doesn't know that. To her, I'm just another rich man who thinks he can manipulate people like chess pieces." Raphael stood up, starting to walk back and forth. "And you know the worst part? She's right. I acted exactly like that, as if I had the right to decide for her how things should be." "And what are you going to do now?" Raphael stopped walking and looked out the huge window that overlooked the perfectly manicured garden. "I'm going to prove to her that I'm more than the Count. I'm going to prove that the man she met really exists. But I'm going to do it the right way this time. No lies, no manipulations. I'm just going to be honest, and if she rejects me anyway, I'll accept it." "How do you intend to do that?" Raphael turned to the lawyer with renewed determination in his eyes. "I'm going back to the streets, but this time I'm going to tell her exactly where I'm going to be and why. I'm going to give her the choice I should have given her from the beginning." A week later, Louisa was returning from work when she saw a thick envelope waiting for her at the boarding house front desk. The doorman, Mr. Joachim, handed it over with curiosity written on his face. "It arrived this morning. A driver in a suit brought it, said it was urgent." Louisa went up to her room with the envelope in hand, her heart beating out of rhythm. She knew who it was from even before opening it. When she tore the paper, she found a handwritten letter on high-quality paper, with the elegant and firm handwriting she recognized immediately. "Louisa, I know I have no right to ask you to read this. I know you'll probably throw it away as soon as you see it's mine, but I need to try. You were right in everything you said. I lied, I deceived, I manipulated the situation to serve my purposes. And there is no excuse for that. No matter how noble I thought my intentions were, the result was the same. I caused pain to someone who didn't deserve it. But I need you to know one thing. The man you met on that sidewalk, the man who listened to your stories, who talked to you about dreams and fears, who fell in love with your genuine kindness, that man is real. He exists, and he is completely in love with you. The money, the title, the mansion, none of that defines me. They are just circumstances of my birth, of my family. But the man I am inside, that one you met, that one was honest with you in everything except the external situation. I know this doesn't erase the lie. I know it doesn't change the fact that I deceived you, but I want to offer you something I should have offered from the beginning, the complete truth and the choice. Tomorrow at 6 in the morning, I'm going to be at the same corner where we met. I'll be dressed as I was when you first found me, not because I'm pretending again, but because I want to show you that the man you loved exists independently of the clothes he wears. I'll stay there all day, and the next day and the next, for as many days as necessary, because this time it's not a test. It's a request for you to give me a second chance to make things right, a chance to show you who I really am, without filters, without lies, without games. But the decision is yours, completely yours. If you decide never to see me again, I will accept it. I will love you from afar and root for your happiness, and I will carry the regret for the rest of my life. But if you decide to give me a chance, I promise I will spend every day proving that you didn't regret it. With love and respect, Raphael. Louisa read the letter 3 times, tears falling on the paper and blurring some words. Part of her wanted to tear it all up and throw it in the trash. She wanted to forget that Raphael existed, move on, maybe even give a chance to Dr. Marcos, who kept insisting on inviting her to dinner. But another part of her, the part that remembered the grey eyes looking at her with genuine adoration, the part that remembered the deep conversations about dreams and fears, the part that still felt the taste of that desperate kiss on the morning of the fight. That part wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, love was stronger than the mistake. "What are you going to do?" asked Jessica, who had read the letter over her shoulder. "I don't know," Louisa admitted. "He hurt me so much, Jay. I don't know if I can trust him again. But do you still love him?" Louisa closed her eyes. That was the question she didn't want to answer because she knew what the truth was. Yes, unfortunately, yes. Then maybe it's worth at least hearing what he has to say. The next morning, Louisa woke up at 5 o'clock without needing an alarm clock. She sat on the edge of the bed, her heart beating fast, debating with herself. To go or not to go, to forgive or to move on, to give a second chance or to protect her own heart. At 5:30, she stood up and started getting ready. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do when she got there, but she knew she needed to at least see. She needed to look into his eyes and try to understand if what she felt was real or just the remains of a broken illusion. When she arrived at the corner, Raphael was already there. Sitting on the ground, leaning against the same wall as always, dressed in simple but clean clothes. When he saw her, he stood up quickly, his eyes wide with surprise and hope. "You came," he said, his voice trembling. "I did, but I don't know why." Louisa crossed her arms, keeping her distance. "I don't know what I'm doing here." "You are giving me a chance to explain, for real this time." "Then explain. Tell me everything from the beginning, no lies." And Raphael told her. He told her about his lonely childhood amidst luxury, surrounded by people who only approached out of interest. He told her about the failed engagements with women who loved his money, not him. He told her about the decision to do the experiment, about the hard months on the streets, about the loneliness and the despair of realizing his theory was right. No one cared. And then he told her about her, about that first morning when Louisa stopped and offered bread with a kindness he didn't know still existed, about how each conversation melted his defenses, about the exact moment he realized he had fallen in love. It was when she defended him from those aggressive men, when she held his face and said he was worth it. "At that moment I knew I had made the biggest mistake of my life," Raphael said, his voice choking up, "because I had found exactly what I was looking for, but under circumstances that made it impossible to have. How could I tell you the truth without destroying everything?" "You should have trusted me," Louisa said, wiping her own tears. "You should have believed that I was strong enough to handle the truth. I know, and I hate myself for not doing that, for treating you as if you were fragile when you are the strongest person I've ever met." They stood in silence for a long moment. People passed hurriedly around them, going to work, living their lives, oblivious to the intense drama happening on that sidewalk. "Show me," Louisa said finally. "What? Your life? Your house? Who you really are when you're not pretending to be someone else. If you want me to know you for real, then let me know everything." Raphael hesitated. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured. I want to see. I need to see to understand who you are when you're not here on this sidewalk." Raphael nodded, took the expensive cell phone from his pocket and made a call. "Carlos, can you come pick me up?" "Yes, at the usual place. And prepare the house. I'm bringing a visitor." 15 minutes later, a black Mercedes stopped at the corner. A driver in a suit got out and opened the rear door with a respectful bow. "Good morning, Mr. Raphael." Louisa looked at the car, at the driver, back at Raphael. The reality of what he was, of the world to which he belonged, was materializing in front of her in a way that still seemed surreal. "Shall we?" Raphael asked, extending his hand. Louisa looked at the extended hand and then looked into the grey eyes she knew so well. And in those eyes she saw the same man, the man who listened to her stories, who made paper flowers, who kissed her with desperation on that morning that seemed to have happened so long ago. With her heart beating fast, she placed her hand in his and got into the car. The mansion was in Perdizes, hidden behind high walls and wrought iron gates. When the car entered the driveway lined with imperial palms, Louisa felt her stomach churn. It wasn't nervousness of the kind she felt when Raphael revealed the truth. It was something deeper, the absolute awareness that she was entering a completely different world from her own, a world she never imagined having access to. The house itself was monumental. 3 floors of classical architecture with white columns, huge windows with colored stained glass, impeccably manicured gardens, and a marble fountain in the center of the main courtyard. Louisa knew big houses. She worked in one every day. But this was different. This was wealth at a level she only saw in movies. "It's a lot, I know," Raphael said softly when he saw the expression on her face. "I grew up here and sometimes I still feel out of place in this house." The driver opened the door and Louisa got out of the car with shaky legs. Staff appeared from all sides, a housekeeper in an impeccable uniform, 2 discreet but attentive security guards, a young man who must have been a personal assistant. They all greeted Raphael with deference and looked at Louisa with ill-disguised curiosity. "Everyone, this is Louisa," Raphael introduced, "and I want everyone to treat her with the same respect you treat me. In fact, with even more respect." The housekeeper, a lady with grey hair and an elegant posture, smiled warmly. "Welcome, Miss Louisa. My name is Helena. Anything you need, I am at your disposal." Raphael led Louisa inside the house, and she had to make a conscious effort not to let her jaw drop. Crystal chandeliers hung from very high ceilings, decorated with frescoes. Works of art she only knew from books adorned the walls. Antique and valuable furniture filled huge rooms. Everything breathed tradition, history, money. "Come," Raphael said, taking her hand delicately. "I want to show you something." He led her through the corridors until they reached an immense library, with dark wood shelves that went from floor to ceiling, filled with books of all sizes and eras. But it wasn't the books Raphael pointed to. It was a discreet corner where there was a worn reading armchair, completely out of place in the middle of such opulence. "This was my mother's chair," Raphael explained, his voice soft. "She died when I was 10, cancer, and before she died she made me promise one thing, that I would never let money turn me into someone empty, that I would use all of this to make a difference in the world." Louisa looked at the old armchair and felt something tighten in her chest. "And did you?" "I tried. I invested in social projects, financed schools, hospitals, but always from afar, always through foundations and institutions. Never personally. Never for real." Raphael looked at her with naked vulnerability in his eyes. "Until you. You were the first person who made me feel that I could make a difference, not with money, but just by being human." "Raphael," Louisa didn't know what to say. "Let me show you one more thing." He took her to his office, where several organized documents were on the mahogany desk. He picked up a thick envelope and handed it to her. "Open it!" With trembling hands, Louisa opened it. They were official papers, stamped, signed. It took a few seconds to process what she was reading. It was the deed to a house. A house in her name. What is this?" "It's a house. It's not big like this one, but it's in a good, safe neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garden. It's yours." Louisa raised her eyes, shocked. "I can't accept this. Are you crazy?" "It's not to buy you, Louisa. It's to give you the security you deserve to have. It's so that you never have to worry about late rent, about eviction, about living in places that are not worthy of you." "But it's too much. I barely know you for real and you're giving me a house." Raphael held her hands, looking deep into her eyes. "You know me better than anyone in this world. You know the man I am when I take off all the masks. You know my fears, my insecurities, my loneliness. And even so, you were kind to me. That is worth more than any house, any money." "That doesn't change the fact that you lied." "I know. And I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But Louisa, look at me, look for real. He squeezed her hands. The man on that sidewalk was me. Not a fake version, not a character. It was me, stripped of everything that normally defines me in the eyes of the world. And that man fell in love with you in such a deep, true way that he is willing to do anything to prove it. Louisa felt the tears flow. How do I know I can trust you again? You don't. And I don't expect you to trust me immediately, but let me spend the rest of my life showing that you can. Let me prove to you, day after day, that the love I feel is real, that it has nothing to do with you being humble or me being rich. It has to do with you being you, with the kindness you carry, with the strength you have, with the way you see the world and people. Louisa closed her eyes, fighting the whirlwind of emotions. Part of her was still furious, hurt, scared, but another part, the part that had already fallen in love with that man when she thought he had nothing, that part wanted to believe. She wanted to take the leap of faith. I need time, she said finally. I need to process all this, your life, your world, what this means for us. As much time as you need, I will wait. And I don't want the house, not yet. If one day if this works out between us, it could be different. But now it would be as if you were buying me, and I am not for sale. Raphael smiled, a sad but respectful smile. As you wish, I'll keep the deed, and when you are ready, if you ever are, it will be waiting. Louisa spent the rest of the day getting to know the house, getting to know the Raphael who existed in that context. She saw how he treated the employees with genuine respect, how he knew the story of each of them, how he cared. She saw the books he read, the music he listened to, the social projects he indeed financed. She saw that behind the facade of wealth existed a man with substance, with values, with a heart that was hurt but still capable of loving. And when evening fell and he asked the driver to take her back home, Louisa realized something important. She was seeing the real Raphael now, not the beggar, not the count, the complete man with all his contradictions, his errors and his virtues. "Can I see you tomorrow?" Raphael asked when she was about to get into the car. Louisa hesitated, then nodded. "At our corner early in the morning, the way we met." In the days that followed, they established a new routine. Raphael went to the corner every morning, no longer pretending to be a beggar, but simply being there, available. And Louisa went too, bringing coffee, talking, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been broken. But the world around them was not making things easy. When photos of Louisa entering Raphael's mansion leaked to the social press, the scandal exploded. The headline of the most sensationalist newspaper was cruel. "Millionaire Count gets involved with cleaning lady. Love or opportunism?" Donna Cecilia called again, this time furious. "Louisa, are you going out with him now, with the Count after everything?" "We are talking, Donna Cecilia, trying to understand our feelings. And my nephew, Marcos, is devastated. I never gave Dr. Marcos hope, and he knows it. But he could give you a good life. Raphael de Albuquerque will get tired of you and will leave you. Men like him don't stay with women like you." Those words hurt more than Louisa imagined they would, because they touched on all her secret fears. What if Donna Cecilia was right? What if Raphael really did get tired? What if all that was just a phase, a temporary rebellion against his own world? When she told Raphael about the call, he was furious. "She has no right to talk to you like that." "But what if she's right?" Louisa's voice came out small. "Raphael, look at us, look at the differences. You're a count. I clean houses for a living. How can this work?" Raphael held her face between his hands. "Do you know what the difference is between you and me? None that matters. We are two human beings who found each other and fell in love. The rest is just context. Context that doesn't define who we are inside. But your world won't accept this. Your family, your friends, everyone will see me as an opportunist. Then let them see. I don't care what they think. I care what you think, what you feel." "I feel fear," Louisa admitted. "Fear of not being enough for your world, fear of disappointing you. You could never disappoint me. And let my world adapt to you, not the other way around." But things got worse when Marcos decided to intervene directly. He appeared at the boarding house where Louisa lived, with flowers and a proposal. "Louisa, let me take you out of this life. Marry me, I'll give you stability, respect, a place in society." "Dr. Marcos, with all respect, I don't love you." Love is built, and it's much easier to build love on a solid base than on quicksand. Raphael will hurt you, he'll get tired and leave you. But I would stay, because I value you. Do you value me, or do you value the idea of having saved me, of having molded me? Marcos turned red. You're being ungrateful. I'm being honest, and my answer is no. It always was and always will be no. When Marcos left, furious, Luisa realized something fundamental. For the first time in her life, she was choosing what she wanted, not what was safer or easier. She was choosing love, even with all the risks. 2 weeks later, Raphael took her to a special place. It wasn't the mansion, it wasn't an expensive restaurant. It was a small farm in the mountains, simple but cozy, where he went when he needed to escape from everything. I bought this place right after my mother died, he explained. It's the only place where I can really breathe. They spent the entire weekend there, talking, cooking together, walking along the trails. And it was there, sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, that Raphael asked the question that would change everything. Luisa, I know I made mistakes, I know I hurt you, but I also know that I will never love anyone the way I love you. So I'm asking you, give me a real chance. Not as a count, not as a beggar, but as a man, as Raphael. Let us try for real. Luisa looked at him, into those grey eyes she knew so well, and saw everything she needed to see. She saw genuine love. She saw sincere regret. She saw true commitment. And she saw the man who had fallen in love with her when he pretended to have nothing, proving that what he felt had nothing to do with interest or convenience. Yes, she said, her voice firm. Yes, I want to try, for real. With all the challenges, all the fears, all the differences, because I love you. I love the man you are, with money or without money. I love your vulnerability, your late honesty, your willingness to be different from what your world expects. Raphael pulled her into a kiss that erased all the months of pain, all the tears shed, all the sleepless nights. A kiss that was both a promise and a new beginning. In the months that followed, they built a relationship based on absolute transparency. Raphael introduced Luisa to his entire family, facing criticism and judgment with unwavering firmness. When his aunt, ironically also an Albuquerque, insinuated that Luisa was a gold digger, he cut ties immediately. Either you respect the woman I love, or you are no longer part of my life. The choice is yours. Luisa, for her part, continued working. She refused all of Raphael's offers to support her, insisting that she wanted to maintain her independence. But she accepted when he offered to pay for the technical nursing course she had always dreamed of taking. It's not supporting you. It's investing in your dream. Let me be part of that. And so slowly, they built a life together that belonged neither to her world nor to his world, but to both of them. A world where love was more important than status, where truth was worth more than appearances, where two completely different human beings found a way to be complete together. A year later, Raphael asked her to marry him. Not in a fancy restaurant, not with photographers and champagne, but on that same corner in Braz where they met, on his knees on the sidewalk that witnessed the unlikely beginning of everything. You taught me that true wealth is not in the bank, it's in the heart, and my heart is all yours. Will you marry me? Luisa looked at the simple but beautiful ring he offered, at the man kneeling in the dirt without caring about his expensive suit, and smiled with eyes full of happy tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The wedding was small, intimate, exactly as Luisa wanted. She wore a simple but elegant dress, not the expensive outfits Raphael offered. And when they stood at the altar, they were not count and cleaning lady. They were Raphael and Luisa. Two imperfect human beings who chose to build something perfect, a love based on truth. Years later, when they told the story to their children, they always ended in the same way. And that's why you need to understand, Luisa would say, holding Raphael's hand. True love has nothing to do with money or status. It has to do with seeing the person's soul, with accepting mistakes and choosing to forgive, with building something together that is stronger than any obstacle. Your mother taught me, Raphael would add, looking at her with the same love as always in his grey eyes, that the greatest luxury in the world is not having everything. It's having someone who loves you for what you are when you have nothing. And for that, Even with all my mistakes, I will never stop being grateful for that morning when she stopped on a dirty sidewalk and saw a human being where everyone saw only a beggar. And Louisa would smile because she knew that man, the beggar who was a count, the count who learned to be human, was right. They had found each other in the most unlikely place, in the most imperfect way. But they had built something rare and precious. A love that survived the differences, the lies, the judgments, and the fears. A love that proved that in the end, what really matters is not where you come from or what you possess,